Tanzania is the largest country in East Africa. Mount Kilimanjaro, once an active volcano, about 99% of Tanzania's people live in rural areas. Most of the land was once savanna and bush, but today is semi-desert. The world's largest remaining elephant population is in the Selas Game Reserve in Tanzania, but they are still being killed for their ivory. In the north of Tanzania, there is an indigenous hunter-gatherer tribe of about 1,300 people, known as the Hadza or Hadzabe tribe. They are believed to be one of the world's, and Africa's, last remaining hunter-gatherer tribes. The Hadza live in Lake Easi Abo Bahika in the central Rift Valley, and the adjacent Serengeti Plateau. Located in Barre, an administrative ward of Karatu District, primarily in southwest Arusha region. The Hadza, or Hadzabe, are a protected hunter-gatherer Tanzanian indigenous ethnic group. As descendants of Tanzania's primitive, pre-Bantu expansionist hunter-gatherer population, they occupied their present territory for thousands of years, with relatively little change in their basic lifestyle, probably until the last century. They have no known close genetic relatives, and their language is considered isolated. Since the first European contact in the late 19th century, governments and missionaries have made many attempts to control the Hadza, introducing agriculture and Christianity. These efforts have largely failed, and many Hadza still follow the lives of their ancestors. From the 18th century onwards, the Hadza came into increasing contact with pastoralist peoples who entered Hadzaland, sometimes reducing their population. The Hadza people traditionally live in bands or camps of about 20 to 30 people, and their social structure is egalitarian and non-classified. Traditionally, they depend for food, mostly on honey, tubers, fruits, and especially in the dry season meat. Hadza is a fully verbal language. UNESCO says that the language is at risk because most children learn it, but the use is limited in certain areas of life, such as in their homes. A narrative of oral history of the Hadza, dividing their past into 4 periods. Every culture is different. According to this tradition, at the beginning of time, the earth was inhabited by hairy giants called Akakanabe or Jaranbai. The Akakanabe had no tools or fire, and until they died, ate the raw meat they hunted. At that time they did not build houses, they used to sleep under trees. In the second period, the Akakanabes were replaced by the Hadzabe. The Hadzabe were the first people to use medicine and charms to protect themselves from enemies, and to initiate the Epum ritual. They lived in caves. The third period was inhabited by the Hamakwanabe people, who were smaller than their predecessors. They invented the bow and arrow, mastered the use of cooking pots and fire. The people of Hamkwanibi were the first of the ancestors of the Hadza to make contact with non-food people. Fourth era continues to this day. When discussing the prophetic era, people often refer to specific names and places and roughly how many generations ago the events took place. The Hadza are not closely related to any other people. The ancestors of the Hadza have probably lived in their present territory for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence suggests that 50,000 years ago, at least from the beginning of the later Stone Age, the region is occupied by hunter-gatherers such as the Hadza. Until about 500 BCE, Tanzania was occupied exclusively by hunter-gatherers, such as the Hadza. The first agriculturalists to enter the region were Cushitic-speaking cattle herders from the Horn of Africa. About 500 Bantu arrived in Tanzania, bringing with them a population of farmers with iron tools and weapons. In this region, the last major ethnic group to enter was the Nilotic priests, who migrated south from the Sudan in the 18th century. Expansion of farming and herding peoples displaced previous populations of hunter-gatherers, who were depopulated and at technological disadvantage, and at risk of loss of ecological resources, arable land, and pastures. Groups such as the Hadza and Sanda are remnants of once vast indigenous hunter-gatherer populations, and they are under constant pressure from agricultural expansion on their traditional lands. By comparison, farmers and herders appeared only recently around Hadzaland. The Isanju, a Bantu farming people, settled in the south of Hadzaland around 1850. Pastoral Arakan Datuga were forced to migrate to the area in both the 19th century and the expansion of the Maasai at the end of the 1900s. The Hadza have direct contact with the Maasai and easy west of Lake Sukuma. The Maasai expansion in the late 19th century caused devastation that led to the decline of the Hadza. Many of these peoples had enmity with the Hadza. Herders often killed the Hadza in retaliation for stealing livestock, as the Hadza had no concept of animal ownership and hunted them as wild game. The general attitude of neighboring agriculturalists towards the Hadza was prejudiced. They saw them as backward, they lacked the original language, and they were made up of neighboring tribes who had fled to the forests due to poverty. The Hadza, the first Europeans to report encounters, were Otto Dempwolf and Eric Obst. The latter, in 1981, lived with them for 8 weeks. The techniques the Hadza used to hunt in the past, they still hunt today. In recent years, the Hadza region has seen increasing aggression from neighboring populations. Western Hadza lands are now a private hunting reserve, with hunting prohibited. During the rainy season, the main diet of the Hadzas is honey, fruits, tubers, and occasionally meat. But mainly eats meat during summer. The Hadza eat the tubers and fruit from the baobab tree, which gives them about 100 to 150 grams of fiber per day. The Hadza are highly efficient, selective, and opportunistic, adjusting their diet according to season and situation. Depending on local availability, some groups may rely more on tubers, some on berries. Like the video, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe to get this kind of videos.